I can fairly easily see that Socrates was something of a sophist, that Plato was often a silly idealist, that Kant courageously threw out God and then cravenly brought him in the back door, that Freud was an errant overgeneralizer, that Jung was brilliant but a sloppily mystical thinker, that Wilhelm Reich was pretty psychotic, that Carl Rogers was a nice fellow but an FFB, a fucking fearful baby.
Ellis outlined a model to identify and assess the source of emotional distress with an approach called the A-B-C model. One must be able to identify an activating event or experience, which is known as A, as well as be able to denote the consequence, which is the emotional reaction, what we refer to as C in this model. The B represents their beliefs about the event, and these are the real source of the problem. When they are problematic and maladaptive, Ellis referred to these as irrational beliefs or IBs.
My Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, REBT, was one of the very few therapies that was organized partly or largely because I wanted to be brief and efficient.
So Elaine, what brought you in today?
Well, I've been having these really terrible fights with my sister. Our dad's recently had major surgery, so we've been seeing a lot of each other, but every time we're in the same room, we just have this terrible fight. And every time I'll blow up and she'll blow up, and it's just, I don't know what to do about it. It's so upsetting.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of anger between you and your sister right now.
Yes.
Okay, well, why don't we try to get to the source of that anger? See, what we think in REBT is that there's typically an activating event. In this case, it's being around your sister, having these interactions with her, that's causing this anger that you feel. But what we believe in REBT is that there's actually a middle ground, an area of these irrational beliefs that are actually causing the emotion that you feel. So for you, what is it you think is bringing about this anger?
Just being in the same room with my sister.
Okay, and if you're in the same room, what happens?
She will immediately criticize me, and I'll just get angry.
Okay, and if she criticizes you, what does that mean?
That means she thinks I'm stupid.
And if she thinks you're stupid, then what?
Well, she's a lawyer, so has a way of getting everyone on her side. So if she thinks I'm stupid, then everyone's going to be on her side.
Okay, and if everyone's on her side and thinks you're stupid, what do you think then?
Then they won't like me. No one will like me.
Okay, and if they don't like you, what does that mean?
Unlikable people they don't have friends. I would never want to be that type of person. I'd feel worthless.
Okay, so basically it sounds like you're taking this idea of this criticism by your sister and generalizing it to the fact that it causes all this anger for you. Mm-hmm. So that criticism is your activating event. The anger is this consequence that you feel. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like we found a middle ground there, these irrational beliefs that I referred to before. So basically for you, if people don't like you, all of a sudden you think you're this horrible person. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's this irrational belief of thinking you're a horrible person is actually causing that rage and anger for you. Mm-hmm. As you can see, maybe it's these irrational beliefs as opposed to the sister's criticism.
Yeah. When I'm around my sister, I do feel like horrible, like I'm a horrible person, but I don't really believe that about myself.
The technique used by the therapist in this session is called inference chaining. The purpose of this type of questioning is to incrementally guide the client to dissect the basis of their irrational belief. It's important for the client to realize the most relevant inference that is causing the emotional or behavioral problems known as the consequence. It is important for clients to know that the responsibility for having an emotion belongs to them, not another person.
It's never the events that happen that make us disturbed, but our view of them. No one can make you feel almost anything, except with a baseball bat.
So, Elaine, do you mind trying a little imagery maybe to uncover some additional irrational beliefs, maybe a little role play, pretending your sister's in the room?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so what I want you to do is just close your eyes. Okay. I want you to pretend your sister is here, and I want you to think, what would she be saying to you right now?
Elaine, we don't need your help with Dad. We can handle it on our own, especially since you always just add more stress to the situation.
How could you say that? He's my dad, too. I love him just as much as you do, and just because I don't have as much money as you do doesn't mean that I can't be useful here.
Well, how about you get a steady job? And then you could send help from time to time,
Listen.
and you could live more comfortably. And when you come to visit us, you wouldn't be burdening us with rides all the time, and it wouldn't be so much stress, and it would just be better for everyone.
Listen. I support my own family. How could you say that? I support my own family. I do what I can. Why do you have to say such hateful things? You're such a monster.
Okay, Elaine, let me interrupt you for a moment. Do you see how your feelings of rage and frustration here are making you jump all the way to the conclusion that your sister is an absolute monster?
But she is. I mean, I'm trying my best to be a good wife, a good mother, a good daughter, and even in this situation, she's criticizing me, and she makes me feel worthless.
Okay, well, don't forget that just because she criticizes you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're worthless. But here I want to focus on the irrational belief about your sister. Basically, you're saying that all of these feelings of anger that you have, based on her criticizing and all the things that she's saying, mean that she's an absolutely horrible, awful person.
But she's really terrible. How could she say those things about me? She's just rotten to the core.
But do you really think that she's supposed to be perfect? I mean, have there been times that you've said things that maybe weren't the nicest?
Yeah.
Okay, and does that mean that you're necessarily an awful person or a bad person because of those things you said?
No.
Okay. So what you want to think about is that sometimes people say bad things or do bad things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person overall.
Yeah. I can see that if I think about my sister as being a good person who maybe doesn't say the right things all the time, I feel a little less angry at her.
Okay. And what you might want to think about is that maybe it's not the insults and the criticism that's causing this anger, but actually the anger is manifesting from your sister, your idea that your sister is a bad person overall. Mm-hmm. So if you kind of change that irrational belief that she's not an overall bad person, it might alleviate some of that anger and frustration that you feel.
Mm-hmm.
I hate what the people here at the Institute are doing, immorally and unethically. I think they're fallible, stupid people who are doing the wrong thing. But they may be nice to their mothers. You damn the things people do, you don't damn them.
REBT promotes the idea that judging human beings as entirely worthy or unworthy only causes distress because of unattainable ideals. People are neither all good nor all evil and thus are fallible. So an individual can be a good person who behaves poorly, but that doesn't mean he or she is a bad person overall. The goal for clients is to practice unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional acceptance of others, and unconditional acceptance of life. According to REBT, when this is achieved, the person experiences less overall unhappiness and distress.
The best years of your life are the ones in which you decide your problems are your own. You do not blame them on your mother, the ecology, or the president. You realize that you partly control your own destiny.
An essential component of REBT is to use homework assignments to help clients work on breaking down their irrational beliefs, as well as helping them to uncover other irrational beliefs on their own. The self-help worksheet is an example of a homework technique used to put REBT into action in a person's life. The goal is to help individuals practice breaking down irrational thoughts and finding healthier ways to live. Strategies include skills training, reading, and experiential activities. Most of these are learned in therapy and then assigned for practice at home.
We teach people that they upset themselves. We can't change the past, so we change how people are thinking, feeling, and behaving today.
So, Elaine, I want to go over the homework assignment I gave you last week. I've made a copy so we can both take a look at it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you did?
Okay, so in the first box, I wasn't able to finish, but in the first box, I realized that my activating event was a series of angry emails I've been sending with my sister, and the consequences were just persistent anxiety and anger caused by these emails.
Okay.
And I did realize, I think my irrational belief is that I think that sisters should be a certain way, that they should be really close, and that because we're not close, that just means my whole family is all wrong.
Okay, so you were basically able to see that your persistent anger and anxiety are not actually caused by the angry emails, but instead by this belief that sisters should, under all circumstances, no matter what, get along with each other.
Right, but I don't see how that's really irrational because that's what I believe. Sisters should be close.
All right, well, let's talk about that. What kind of relationships do you have with other family members?
Well, I get along okay with my brothers and with my parents.
Okay. So you admit that it could be much worse and more pervasive throughout the family. You could have problems with all of your family members.
True,
Okay.
but I don't.
But do you see how maybe we've disputed that irrational belief then?
Yeah, so just because I don't get along well with my sister doesn't mean that I can't find meaning from my other family relationships, and that disagreeing with one family member doesn't mean that it has to be that way with my whole family.
Glory, hallelujah. Vipocheya then popoya. If you'd soften how they'd screw ya. Don't expect they won't.